Today is International Women's Day. And why, pray tell, do we have Women's Day? That's a wonderful question for me to happily answer. You see, this is a special day indeed, because women have been seen as unequal with and having lesser rights than a man up until about the time secularism began to flourish, which has finally freed many women from a long and dark Islamic and Christian heritage. Hold on, Christian heritage? You're blaming Christianity for women's suffrage? Before you check out or make any unfair assessments, allow me to explain clearly in just one moment. But first, any woman living today who is of long age will have a very real remembrance of what it was like for women 100 years ago. Women today can run for president. Women in 1919 couldn't even cast a vote. Women have come a long way in a short amount of time, and I couldn't be more happy about it. No woman ever should have been treated any lesser than. However, let me shed some light on some of those not-so-good old days. For thousands of years, women were under real and oftentimes cruel oppression. Most of this long and dark history was solidified under the Abrahamic God of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In the Old Testament, God clearly devalues women by placing a penalty on any child born a female. A woman who gives birth to a male child is unclean for 7 days, but 14 days if the child is female. What's even worse is that a woman was not even her own person. She was a man's property. In Leviticus we read, "You may buy some of the temporary residents living among you, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property." However, males were treated much better. If a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free, as male servants do. My friends, servants weren't paid. They were owned. These were slaves, and the male slaves had to be freed, but not the female slaves. Even Jesus depicts this dark reality in a parable about a man having to sell his wife and children due to his debt. This was normalized across all of the Abrahamic religions. "And when the Lord your God delivers the enemy into your hands, ye shall strike every male in it with the edge of the sword. But the women, the little ones, and all that is in the city, you shall plunder for yourself." Women and children were nothing more than objects to be plundered, property to be bought and sold. In the book of Deuteronomy, God commanded the killing of every man, woman, and child, except for the young virgins. Why only the young virgins, perhaps between the ages of 10 and 15, are spared from the sword? Well, obviously to become sex slaves, or concubines. In 1 Kings, we learn a little more about these girls. King Solomon had a few of these treasures. You see, in this passage, God never told Solomon he can't have 300 concubines, along with his 700 wives. God only told Solomon he wasn't allowed to keep these foreign ones. For some reason, the king couldn't have what the other men were allowed. Perhaps he was royalty, so only the best purebreds were for him. But according to this story, 700 wives just wasn't enough for this king's appetite. Regardless, God was indifferent to the cruelty placed on these women, sex slaves, and the Bible clearly ordains rape. When you go out to war against your enemies, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, You can bring her home, shave her head, pare her nails, and go in unto her. Can you imagine this? Certainly you wouldn't believe a woman would wish to be utterly broken by having her head shaved, and then to sleep with a man who just killed all of her family, brothers, sisters, dads, and moms. Please, let's not think for 1 second that these women were in love with their keepers. Consider the story of King David and Bathsheba. Bathsheba was a married woman, but David lusted for her, raped and impregnated her, and then had her husband killed. And God even murdered her baby as punishment for David. No concerns for the woman whatsoever. And of course she was forced into a marriage with her rapist and her real husband's murderer. Hence the Bible verse we see here. A woman who is raped can be sold to her rapist. If this Bible verse doesn't ordain rape, I'm not sure what does. Mind you, it also says sold. She is property. And concerning the story of David and Bathsheba, ironically, she was the woman who provided David with his son Solomon, the holy lineage of Jesus and the next king of Israel, who himself kept 1,000 women. If you think David or Solomon loved these women, or that these women loved them back, you're being very naive. It is foolish to believe any of these women were treated as anything other than property, to be used sexually whenever called upon. They had no other purpose. These kings essentially kept a very large porn collection of living women, and God allowed it. What a missed opportunity God had to end this cruelty towards women when writing the 10 Commandments. Rather than fixing cruel injustice, God instead thinks more about himself. The first 4 commandments are all about his fragile ego and his desire to be worshipped. Because God decided not to speak out for women, women would suffer for it. Of course, little has changed within some of the Abrahamic faiths. The Islamic cultures, right on up till this day, practice such cruel injustice. But Christianity would be just as oppressive. The New Testament clearly places the man at the head of the household. Wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands, as unto the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife. Well, you might say, that's just a traditional family hierarchy. No, if that's the way your culture lives and or the order that suits your family best, so be it. It doesn't, however, make it right. Having God command that man is above the woman leads to oppression and inequality, as which we read in the New Testament epistle to the Corinthians. Let your women keep silent in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law. And if they will learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home. For it is a shame for women to speak in the church. Corinthians also says, every woman should have her head covered when she prays, or she should have her head shaved. Here's what it says about a man. For a man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God. According to Christian theology, women are lesser. The New Testament also instructs a woman not to braid her hair or wear jewelry. And the first epistle of Timothy also disparages women in much the same way as Corinthians. It reads, But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. And contrary to the lame apologetic excuses for these misogynist verses, this author actually tells you why women are not allowed to speak in church. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. You see, according to the Christian religion, man came first. Weird, because females are the ones with the eggs. Well, regardless, this is a bold and strong statement of inequality and blame. And because of this theology, women have long suffered and been treated unequally. If you don't think the Christian religion has had an effect on how women have been treated for thousands of years after these books were written, you're being very ignorant. During the women's suffrage in 1897, which was a huge social push to make the rights of women equal to men, one of the major activists, Elizabeth Stanton, said, "In the early days of women's suffrage, I saw that the greatest obstacle we had to overcome was the Bible. It was hurled at us on every side." Christianity has outright blamed women for the entire fall of not only mankind, but the entire world. In Ecclesiasticus we read, "Of the woman came the beginning of sin, and through her we all die." That nearly sounds like hate speech to me. And, of course, it's the Adam and Eve story, an apple and a talking snake. Mythology, right? Nope. These people believe these magical and mythological stories are real human history. It's the God who had Moses wield a magical staff. Take this staff so you can perform signs, magic, with it. And he did. He even turned it into a snake in a battle of wizardry with Egypt's magicians. You believe that? This God also armed his angels with Bronze Age swords. They even kept them in sheaths. And apparently, God even rode upon their backs. Yes, this God, or perhaps I should say this God, is only the imagination of these men, who have placed a lesser value on women that would stick for thousands of years. My friends, it should be overwhelmingly clear that the God of the Bible made no attempt to relieve women from a place of abuse and suffering. It wasn't until the modern age of secularism that women would finally be free from bondage. To all of you lovely and amazing women, happy International Women's Day. I only wish I could do more. Stay strong and wise, my friends. Hello, friends. Please help me grow this page by becoming a subscriber and clicking the support button right down below if you're watching on Facebook. Or go to patreon.com/Stairway to Reason and sign up, become a member for as little as $1 a month. And if you don't like subscribing and signing up for things, I have a PayPal where you can make reoccurring monthly donations for as little as $1. It's safe, fast, and super easy. Just ask for my PayPal link in the comments below. Thank you so much, my friends, and stay strong and wise.
I don't believe in masquerades. I don't believe that you're okay. I don't believe that God will save. Only you can solve your problems. I don't care what they sold you. They